Millionaire comes home early. Finds his wife kicking the cleaning lady's black daughter. What he does shocks everyone. The sound of Chloe's high heels echoed across the marble floor of the mansion before. The dull thud of something small hitting the wall. Her useless brat. How many times do I have to tell her not to touch my things? Marcus Thorne stopped at the entrance to the living room, still holding the keys to his Bentley. Her board meeting had ended 2 hours early, and he had decided to return home to enjoy Friday afternoon with his family. What he saw left him paralyzed. Sophie, only 8 years old, was cowering in the corner of the room, tears streaming down her face as she held a broken vase. Blood trickled from a small cut on her knee. Chloe, his wife of 3 years, stood over the girl with an expression of pure hatred Marcus had never seen before. "Do you know how much that vase cost, you little brat?" Chloe pointed her manicured finger at the child's face. "More than her mother earns in a year cleaning this house." Marcus had known Sophie since she was a little girl. Elena, his mother, had worked as a cleaner in the mansion for almost a decade. Since before his first marriage, the girl had always been polite, intelligent, and curious. She sometimes came to work with her mother during school vacations, and Marcus always enjoyed her presence in the house. "Please, Mrs. Chloe." Sophie's small voice trembled. "I was just trying to help clean up. The vase slipped out of my hand when I heard the loud noise from the television." "Liar." Chloe raised her hand as if to slap his child. It was at that moment that something inside Marcus awakened. It wasn't just anger. It was crystal clear clarity about who the woman he had married really was. For 3 years, Chloe had been the perfect wife in front of him and their guests. Polite, elegant, always saying the right words at social events. But now, thinking she was alone with a defenseless child, she was showing her true colors. "Chloe." Marcus's voice cut through the air like a knife. She turned quickly, her face instantly shifting from cruelty to a look of feigned surprise. "Marcus, dear, I didn't hear you come in. This girl just broke the Ming vase that her mother gave us as a wedding gift." Marcus watched the scene with new eyes. Sophie cowering, the cut on her knee, the girl's defensive posture. Everything indicated that this was not an isolated accident. His executive meetings had taught her to read body language. And what she saw there was the fear of someone who had been through this before. "Sophie," Marcus said softly, completely ignoring Chloe. "Are you hurt?" The girl looked nervously between Marcus and Chloe before nodding timidly. "Where is his mother?" "He went to the market to buy cleaning supplies for the kitchen." Sophie replied in a voice that was almost inaudible. Marcus knelt down to the girl's height, keeping his distance so as not to scare her further. "How long has Mrs. Chloe been talking to you like this when I'm not home?" The silence that followed was more revealing than any answer. Chloe cleared her throat uncomfortably. "Marcus, you're overreacting. It was just an accident and I was explaining to her that she needs to be more careful." But Marcus couldn't take his eyes off Sophie. There was something in the girl's expression, a forced maturity. A caution that 8-year-olds shouldn't have. It was the look of someone who had learned to anticipate danger, to measure every move to avoid outbursts of anger. "Has she been harsh with him other times?" Marcus asked gently. Sophie looked at Chloe, then at the floor. The fear in her eyes told Marcus everything he needed to know. At that moment, Marcus Thorne, CEO of a technology company valued at $500 million, realized that he had been completely deceived for 3 years. More importantly, he realized that a child had been suffering abuse in her own home while he was working to build an empire. The expression on Chloe's face changed subtly when she noticed that Marcus was not accepting her version of events. For a second, the same cruel look that she had directed at Sophie flashed across his eyes before being quickly replaced by a mask of wounded innocence. But Marcus had seen it. And now that he knew the kind of person he had really brought into his home, some memories began to fit together in a disturbing way. The days when Elena seemed too tense, The times when Sophie was too quiet when Chloe was around. The seemingly innocent comments about properly educating the employees' children. If you're wondering how a smart man could be deceived for so long, be sure to subscribe to the channel to find out how far a person's ability to manipulate those who trust them can go, and especially to see what happens when that mask finally comes off. Marcus, you're being dramatic. Chloe theatrically, adjusting her platinum blonde hair with calculatedly feminine gestures. Her broke a priceless piece. Someone needs to teach these children responsibility, or they'll grow up thinking they can do whatever they want. Marcus noticed how she pronounced her children with a particular disdain he had never noticed before. 3 years of marriage and only now did he notice the small signs he had completely ignored. Sophie, Marcus said gently, ignoring Chloe's angry look. Can you tell me exactly what happened? The girl looked nervously between the two adults. I was helping clean the living room like I always do when I come with Mom. I heard a really loud noise coming from the TV and got scared. When I turned around quickly, my elbow hit the vase. Her lie. Chloe interrupted sharply. I saw her playing with the vase, pretending it was a microphone. These kids have no idea of the value of things. Marcus knelt down to Sophie's height. What kind of noise did you hear on the television? It was a lady yelling very loudly at a little girl on the screen. The lady said very mean things to the girl. Like Sophie stopped, looking at Chloe with obvious fear. Like what, sweetie? Marcus asked gently. Like, Mrs. Chloe talks to me when Mom goes out to buy things. The answer came out in an almost inaudible whisper. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. How long has this been going on, Sophie? Chloe cleared her throat loudly. Marcus, this is ridiculous. Are you going to believe the fantasies of a spoiled child? She's clearly trying to divert attention from what she did. But Marcus kept his focus on Sophie. Can you tell me other times this has happened? The girl lowered her eyes. Mrs. Chloe said that if I told anyone, Mom would lose her job and we wouldn't have money for food. She said that people like us should be grateful to be here and not cause trouble. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. People like you poor people, and then Sophie hesitated, touching her own dark skin. Go on, Marcus encouraged her. People are color. Mrs. Chloe said. I should always remember his place. Because girls like him can't afford to break important people's things. The silence that followed was piercing. Marcus looked at Chloe, who had completely lost the sweet expression she always kept in front of him. For a moment, her social mask fell completely, revealing something cold and calculating that made Marcus question whether he really knew the woman he had shared a bed with for 3 years. This is a misunderstanding, Chloe said quickly, noticing Marcus's piercing gaze. I was just trying to teach her appropriate boundaries. Elena is an excellent employee, but sometimes she lacks supervision with her daughter. Supervision, Marcus repeated slowly. At that moment, they heard the front door open. Elena had returned from the market. Marcus watched as Sophie instantly stiffened, and as Chloe quickly recomposed her expression into her usual sweet mask. Marcus. Sophie. Elena called from the hallway. Did something happen? Elena entered the room carrying brown paper bags and immediately noticed the tension in the air. His eyes went straight to his daughter's bruised knee, then to the broken porcelain on the floor, and finally to Chloe's icy expression. Marcus saw something in Elena he had never noticed before. The same controlled fear he saw in Sophie's eyes. How had he been so blind for so long? Elena, Chloe said in a honeyed voice. Her daughter had a little accident with the Ming vase. Fortunately, she wasn't seriously hurt. But we need to talk about proper supervision when she comes to work with you. Elena slowly lowered the bags. Sophie, are you okay, sweetheart? I'm fine, Mom, Sophie replied automatically. But Marcus noticed how she avoided her mother's gaze. Elena, Marcus said calmly. Can you take Sophie to the kitchen? I need to bandage that wound. Chloe. And I will talk here. Elena nodded quickly, taking her daughter's hand. But before they left, Marcus saw the exchange of glances between mother and daughter. A silent communication that spoke of shared fear and long-held secrets. As soon as they were alone, Chloe immediately changed tactics. Marcus, dear, you're letting a simple situation become unnecessary drama. Children make up stories, especially when they want to avoid consequences. Consequences? Marcus crossed his arms. What kind of consequences has he been enforcing in my absence? Basic discipline, Chloe replied, her voice losing some of its artificial sweetness. Someone needs to teach this girl about respect and responsibility. Elena is too permissive, and you felt it was her responsibility to do that. Chloe looked at him as if he were a child asking an obvious question. Marcus, I am the lady of this house. It is her duty to maintain order and proper standards. Especially with the children of the servants. The way she said employees. Children revealed a social hierarchy that Marcus had never realized she maintained. He began to wonder how many other things he had missed in the last 3 years. What proper standards? He asked. Respect for property, knowledge of appropriate social boundaries. Gratitude for the generosity they receive. By being allowed here. Chloe gestured around the mansion as if it were obvious. Marcus felt a disturbing clarity settling in. Sophie is 8 years old. Exactly the right age to learn about social hierarchies. If he learns young, he will be an adult better adjusted to the realities of the world. Realities. Marcus could hardly believe what he was hearing. Marcus, be realistic, Chloe sighed impatiently. Elena is a cleaning lady. Sophie will probably follow the same path. It's cruel to give unrealistic hopes to people in certain social positions. I'm just preparing her for real life. It was at that moment that Marcus realized he hadn't married Chloe. He had married a carefully constructed performance. The woman standing before him now, talking about social hierarchies and appropriate positions for an 8-year-old, was a complete stranger. What if I disagree with her approach? He asked. Chloe laughed, a cold sound Marcus had never heard before. Marcus, you work 14 hours a day building your empire. Do you really think you have the time or knowledge to question how I run our home? Marcus studied his wife's face. Our home. Well, I've been managing all domestic aspects for 3 years. I hire employees, fire them when necessary, set rules and standards. You never cared about these details before. For the first time, Marcus wondered how many employees Chloe had fired when necessary. And for what reasons? How many families had been harmed by her negligence in properly supervising his own home? Maybe it's time I cared more, he said simply. Chloe studied him for a moment, and Marcus saw something calculating in her eyes. Of course, dear, but you know how these situations can be complicated. Elena is a loyal employee. But if she starts causing problems or teaching her daughter to be disrespectful, well, there are a lot of people who need work these days. The threat was subtle but clear. Marcus realized he was looking at a woman who used fear and economic insecurity as tools of control. From the kitchen came low voices. Elena treating Sophie's injury while they talked in whispers. Marcus wondered how many similar conversations had taken place over the past 3 years. How many physical and emotional wounds had been treated in silence? Chloe, he said slowly. I think you and he need to rethink some things about how this house works. She studied him with new eyes, realizing that something had irrevocably changed in the dynamic between them. Marcus, I hope you're not thinking of making rash decisions based on a child's dramatizations. But Marcus was no longer listening to his words. He was watching her micro-expressions, the way he chose each word. How he tested the ground to see how far he could push. It was like watching a strategist in action. And he wondered how long he had been manipulated without realizing it. For 3 years, while he was building his company and accumulating wealth, an 8-year-old child had been systematically broken in her own home. And the woman responsible for this was now calculating how to get around her discovery, completely underestimating her ability to react. What Chloe didn't know was that Marcus Thorne hadn't become a millionaire at 35 by being passive or naive. And she was about to discover that some storms once awakened sweep everything in their path. In the kitchen, Marcus found Elena carefully cleaning Sophie's cut knee with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the emotional brutality the girl had suffered minutes before. The conversation between mother and daughter took place in whispers laden with fear and resignation. "Elena," Marcus said softly, making them both jump. "Can we talk?" Elena visibly stiffened. 28 years of cleaning the homes of wealthy families had taught her that conversations like this rarely ended well for people like her. "Of course, Mr. Marcus, if I've done something wrong." "You haven't done anything wrong," Marcus interrupted her. "But I need to understand what's been happening here when I'm not home." Sophie grabbed her mother's hand, his large eyes fixed on Marcus's face. Elena looked nervously toward the room where Chloe remained, clearly calculating the risks of telling the truth versus the danger of lying. "Mrs. Chloe. Her has specific ways of keeping order in the house," Elena said carefully, choosing each word as if walking through a minefield. "What kind of ways?" Elena exchanged a glance with Sophie. It was the girl who spoke, her voice small but determined. "Mr. Marcus. Can I tell you the truth? Even if Mrs. Chloe gets very angry." Marcus knelt down to Sophie's height. "You can always tell the truth.
And I promise that nothing bad will happen to you or your mother because of it. Mrs. Chloe said that children like me need to know our place." Sophie began slowly. "She said it's very generous of her to let Mom bring a defective black girl into her beautiful home, and that if I didn't behave properly, he would send us away without references." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "Did she use those exact words?" "She always talks about how people of our color should be grateful for the opportunities that important people give us," Elena murmured, finally finding the courage to speak, "and that children like Sophie need to understand that they will never have the same chances as rich white children. So it's better to learn humility early on." "Mom cried last night," Sophie added. "Mrs. Chloe said she was going to make up a story that Mom was stealing jewelry if we caused any trouble. She showed us a bracelet that she said she was going to hide in our bag." Marcus felt something cold run down her spine. "Elena, how long has this been going on?" "Since the first month after she married him," Elena admitted, tears beginning to stream down his face. "But Mr. Marcus, we need this job. It's just me and Sophie and without references." Marcus understood the perfect trap Chloe had constructed. Elena was caught between accepting abuse or risking complete financial ruin, and Chloe knew exactly how to exploit that vulnerability. "Elena, I want you to know that his job is secure regardless of what happens with Chloe," Marcus said firmly, "and I want to document everything you've told me. Would you be willing to do that?" Before Elena could respond, Chloe's voice echoed from the living room. "Marcus, honey, where are you? We need to resolve this situation quickly. I have a social engagement in an hour." Marcus noticed how Sophie instinctively cringed when she heard Chloe's voice and how Elena automatically assumed a submissive posture. 3 years of psychological conditioning had turned her home into a prison. For this family, "Stay here," Marcus said. "I'm going to get something for my office, and then we'll talk again." In his office, Marcus opened his laptop and began typing rapidly. As CEO, he had dealt with multiple cases of harassment and discrimination at his company, and he knew exactly what kind of documentation would be necessary. But first, he needed professional help. He called Isabella Rossi, a civil rights lawyer he had met at networking events. It was Friday at 5 p.m., but Isabella answered on the second ring. Marcus, what a surprise. How can I help? Isabella, I need her help with something very serious. It involves psychological and racial abuse against an 8-year-old child in my own home. The line went silent for a moment. I'm listening. Marcus quickly explained the situation. Isabella listened without interruption, asking specific questions that demonstrated her experience with similar cases.
Marcus, legally, you are in a strong position to protect Elena and Sophie. But emotionally the damage has already been done. We need to act quickly and comprehensively, Isabella said. Can I be there in 40 minutes? That should be possible. And Marcus, record everything. Every conversation with Chloe from now on. Her behavior pattern suggests that she will escalate when he feels threatened. While waiting for Isabella, Marcus returned to the kitchen. Elena and Sophie were sitting together talking in whispers. When she saw him, Elena quickly stood up. Mr. Marcus, on second thought, maybe it's better not to get involved in this situation. Mrs. Chloe is right about some things. People like us should be grateful. Elena, Marcus interrupted her gently. No one, regardless of color or social class, deserves to be treated the way Chloe has treated you. And especially not a child. Sophie looked at him with eyes too wise for her age. Mr. Marcus, can we trust him? Really? The question cut deep. This 8-year-old was questioning whether a grown-up would keep his promises. Something that should never be a concern for someone so young. You can trust him, Sophie. And I'll prove it to you. At that moment, they heard Chloe talking on the phone in the living room. Her voice thick with irritation. Yes, Mom. I know you think I'm being too hard on the employees. But someone has to keep these people in their place. Marcus is too soft. He doesn't understand how to deal with certain social classes. Marcus, Elena, and Sophie exchanged glances. Chloe had just revealed that his behavior was not an isolated moment of anger, but a deliberate philosophy that she openly discussed with others. Of course, I'm not going to let Marcus ruin years of work establishing appropriate boundaries. Chloe continued. If he wants to play social savior, he'll learn that there are consequences. Chloe's phone conversation revealed something disturbing. Not only did she abuse Elena and Sophie, but she had developed specific strategies to neutralize any interference from Marcus. The tone of her voice suggested that she had plans to deal with the current situation. Plans that were unlikely to be pleasant for anyone. Marcus realized he was dealing with someone far more calculating and potentially dangerous than he had imagined. Chloe wasn't just a prejudiced person losing control. She was a systematic manipulator who had spent 3 years planning and executing a regime of psychological abuse. From the living room came fragments of the phone conversation that suggested Chloe was already mobilizing outside resources for her defense. And from the confident tone of her voice, she clearly believed it would be easy to neutralize any threat Marcus posed. What she didn't know was that Marcus Thorne had built a $500 million empire by not being naive about human nature. And when she finally decided to act against an injustice, his response was always meticulously planned and devastatingly effective. While Chloe plotted on the other side of the house, Marcus quietly documented every word, preparing a counteroffensive that she would never see coming. Because some battles are not won with shouting or direct confrontation. They are won with intelligence, resources, and a precise understanding of how power really works in the real world. 20 minutes later, when Isabella arrived with 2 private investigators and professional recording equipment, Chloe was still on the phone organizing what clearly appeared to be a smear campaign against Marcus. Her voice echoed through the house with a confidence that was about to turn into a nightmare. If Marcus tries to cause me trouble over this ridiculous situation with the employees, We'll activate Plan B. Chloe laughed as she spoke. 3 years of documenting. Her outbursts of anger and emotional instability will yield a nice alimony settlement. Marcus signaled to Isabella, who immediately began recording. Elena and Sophie remained in the kitchen, but could hear every word through the internal intercom that Marcus had discreetly activated. Of course, I made up some situations to provoke reactions of his. Chloe continued. Rich men are so predictable when they feel challenged. And now, with this whole story of defending the black maid and her little girl, I can paint him as unstable and unfit to manage her own fortune. Isabella raised her eyebrows, whispering to Marcus. She's confessing to conspiracy to commit matrimonial fraud. Keep recording. But the best was yet to come. Chloe, completely absorbed in her phone conversation, didn't notice when Marcus approached the room with a tablet in his hands, streaming the conversation live to his professional LinkedIn profile where he had over 50,000 contacts in the business world. The funniest part is that I managed to make the black girl fear me so much that she wouldn't even dream of telling anyone. Chloe laughed. Kids from that social class are so easy to intimidate. Just threaten the family's financial stability and she becomes completely submissive. The number of views on the live stream had already exceeded 1,000 people, including several CEOs and business leaders Marcus knew personally. Comments began to appear in real time, expressions of shock and outrage. Marcus will learn that there are consequences for interfering with my methods of household management. Chloe continued, now clearly lost in her fantasy of control. And if he insists on defending these people, I will make sure that the entire social elite knows what kind of man he really is. Someone who puts employees above his own wife. It was at that moment that Marcus entered the room, still holding the tablet. Chloe, dear, you have an audience. She turned, the phone still to her ear. And her face instantly palled at the sight of the device in his hands and the growing number of views on the screen. An 8-year-old child for 3 years, using his skin color and economic situation as tools of intimidation. At that moment, Elena entered the room, holding Sophie by the hand. The girl looked directly at Chloe. And for the first time in 3 years, there was no fear in her eyes. Miss Chloe, Sophie said in a surprisingly firm voice. Mr. Marcus taught me that people who hurt children are called bullies and that bullies are only strong when no one is watching. Chloe tried one last gambit. Marcus, are you going to destroy our life because of one employee? Think about what you're doing. I am thinking, Chloe, I am thinking that for 3 years you have built a regime of psychological terror in my own home, using a child as your victim. Marcus approached her, her voice controlled but relentless. I am thinking that you have seriously underestimated both my ability to discover the truth and the consequences of your actions. The tablet now showed over 7,000 views and the notifications kept coming. Messages of outrage, expressions of support for Marcus, and several business contacts cutting ties with any institution Chloe represented. His volunteer services at the Hamilton Foundation have been cancelled. Isabella informed her, reading from her phone. The Malibu Country Club is revoking your membership and apparently 3 different charities where you served are removing his name from all promotional materials. Chloe collapsed into an armchair, finally comprehending the magnitude of his downfall. In less than an hour, he had lost his social reputation, his positions in prestigious organizations, and his source of identity based on status and power over others. The best part, Marcus said, turning off the live stream, is that you did all this yourself. I just provided the platform for the world to know the real Chloe Ashford. Elena approached Marcus. Mr. Marcus, how can we thank him? No need to thank him. Elena. I apologize for taking 3 years to see what was happening under my own roof. Sophie let go of her mother's hand and walked over to Marcus. Mr. Marcus. Now I understand what Mom always told her about good people. They don't care about the color of our skin or how much money we have. They care if we are good people on the inside. While Chloe remained silent, processing the complete destruction of her social and financial life. One last notification arrived on Marcus's phone. A reporter from a major local newspaper was requesting an interview about discriminatory practices in the domestic environments of wealthy families. Chloe's downfall was not just beginning. It was about to become a case study in how prejudice and abuse of power can be completely unmasked when the truth finally comes to light. And the most ironic thing of all was that she herself had provided all the evidence necessary for her own destruction, completely underestimating the intelligence and determination of the people he had spent 3 years trying to subjugate.